Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Okay, welcome to our second, I'd like to say annual event, and you are being recorded. It's for our internal, it's just going to be shared internally. And I want to start by just welcoming you all. And do we have any students here? If you are a student, please raise your hand. No? Okay. All right. How many of us here are board members? Right. Okay. So should we give it a few moments since we're all, yes? Lavinia, you were shaking your head. Should we give it a few moments to begin? Just to see 5 minutes, maybe for students to join? We can unmute, and because I see Rosina's here and Sarah's here. Esther, are you a student?
Good morning. No, I'm an alumni.
You're an
Okay.
alumni. Okay,
Yes.
welcome. Nice to
Thank
have you
you.
here. I'm thinking maybe we can just give it a few moments, and just so if we can see if we have more students joining us, we can have a conversation amongst ourselves for a few minutes. I'm thinking that's okay. Or we had 20 students, or 20 people register. Let's see. Okay. Good morning, Shari. How are you? Dr. Baring.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Doing well. Yes, I hope we get more students in here too. It's that time of year where there's just a kind of a lot going on. And so I'm hoping that hasn't had an impact on our student attendance, because this is great. But I'm thrilled that you're recording this, because we have a way of getting it out to our students in our college. And we really value those recordings, the opportunity to watch this later if they can't do it right now.
Yes. Okay. So then I'll go ahead and get started. I want to thank you all for being here. And education and what we do, it's a lifelong journey, and I love hearing the stories of what brought us into it, right? And here we have an opportunity, even if it's just amongst ourselves and those who will hear it later, to hear what inspired us to get into education and the stories that have really kind of impacted us with moving forward. So I want to begin by just introducing everyone, and I want to thank you so much for being here, Dr. Ornelas, Dr. Conlan, and Dr. Pedroza. Dr. Ornelas is a principal at Beachy Avenue Elementary, and she's also the Association California for School Administrators, Region 16 president. So thank you so much for being here this morning. And Dr. Conlan is a speech language pathologist for the Los Angeles Unified School District. And she also serves on the alumni board here at CSUN. And Dr. Pedroza is an adjunct professor at USC and also a special education teacher for the Los Angeles Unified School District, and a CSUN education alum, and also serves on our education chapter board. So thank you so much. Dr. Pedroza, do you have a question?
Oh, no, just
okay. Because
nodding as, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
It's okay. It's fine. Okay, so we're going to begin with Dr. Ornelas. I want to ask you, and since we're also a small group, if at any time you want to drop a question in the chat, or we're going to just be kind of informal here, just a conversation amongst ourselves. So, Dr. Ornelas, what led you into the education field?
Good morning, everyone. I was thinking about that when I was presented with this question, and I'll be very honest with you. that's all I knew. As a child, you go to school and you have a role model, and your role models are your teachers, right? And I'd come home and I would play school. From the time I was in kindergarten, I was playing school with my younger sister and my older brothers. And then I would spend all of my free time creating tests for them. So instead of playing with, I did play with Barbies, but instead of really playing with dolls, I played school as a child. Growing up, when I graduated high school, I went to a yogurt shop. I was working at a yogurt shop, and who pops into my yogurt shop? My kindergarten teacher. And I had just graduated from high school. And she said, what do you want to be? And I'm like, a teacher, because that's all I knew. Come back to Irwin and become a TA. Do you speak Spanish? Yes, I speak Spanish. So within weeks from graduating high school, I had a job at my elementary school. There I was again amongst teachers. My role models, that's all I knew. My parents owned a sweatshop in downtown. And I remember being a 9 years old going to the sweatshop. I would help out during the summer, but I remember telling the ladies that would iron, when I grew up, I want to iron dresses. And the lady said, no, mija, you never, ever want to iron clothes. And she's like, look at my fingers, look at the arthritis. You go to school. So I either had the ladies sewing dresses or I had my teachers. So there I was right out of high school amongst my role models. And I was paired up with great teachers that told me exactly what to do to graduate within 4 to 5 years, what I needed to do to get a credential, because I didn't have any other role models. And I ended up at CSUN. And as during that last year, my principal at the school where I was a TA had already hired me. She's like, we're just waiting for you to graduate and you have a job here. I graduated, and then the principal that originally hired me, Jean Brown, went to Osceola, and she called me and says, no, you're coming to Osceola. It's a year-round school. We need Spanish teachers. Everyone's replaceable, Lisa. Come work for me. Best experience I had. And so I was always led by one role model after another. And I taught with Jean Brown, and then she left. And again, she was my role model, strong woman, a leader. And I said, Jean, Mrs. Brown, when she left, one day, I want to be like you. I want to follow your footsteps. She left, and I ended up going back to CSUN to get my master's. And when I became a principal, I called her up and I said, I'm following your footsteps.
That's a great story. I just want to highlight how you said you always had these role models and these great teachers. And I think for myself, I can relate to that, just looking back and just remembering some of the great teachers that also inspired me. And just how for me too, it was like all I knew was just school. So I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. So tell us about your current role as a principal now. What are some glows in you?
Glows as a school administrator are the children.
Mm-hmm.
It's the children. As a school administrator, you've got operations and instruction. Operations consumes 80% of your time. It's student safety, and it's your credential. It's what can get you promoted, or it can get you fired. But as a school principal, it's supposed to be the instructional part. So I carve out time just to go into classrooms, and you go in there, of course, to observe teachers teaching. But my highlight is to see the students engaged, to see them asking questions, to see the excitement in their eyes. Today's Saturday school. Before I logged in, I walked classrooms, and today's the last day of Saturday school, and the kids are saying, why does it have to be the last day? I love coming to school. Mm-hmm. It's that opportunity. You see the kids, you see our future. Yeah. So that's my highlight. Everything, I have I'll show you, it's a to-do list of everything I needed. And this is on a Saturday, right? Yeah. So that's being productive. It's just getting it done. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, was I productive or was I impactful? Wow. And it's when I can be when I can make an impact That's my glow. But a principal's job, it's a lot of get it done, get it done, get it done. But your big bucket, can you make an impact on a teacher's life, on a student's life, or on a parent's life? You take those opportunities like gold, and you have to immediately reflect, is this that opportunity?
That's great. It's beautiful. Thank you. So if you had the power to change anything in your current role for the betterment of education and students, what would it be and why?
I just had this conversation with at a principal's meeting yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
If I had that magic wand, I would say, take all of the extra stuff away from my plate.
Yep.
And allow me to just focus on instruction.
Yeah.
Let that just be my responsibility. Take everything off. You know, we call it the flavor of the day. You know, I'll get a phone call from, I'll get it, or an email. You know, you need to focus on the school experience survey, get them in as much as possible. So it's like, stop everything and promote that school experience survey, or stop everything and promote COVID testing stuff, you know.
Yes.
So if I had a magic wand, remove all of that and allow us to focus on students. You know, I always tell, wherever I go, I put my palm out and I tell people, the kids are right here. They should be there on the palm of my hands. This should be my priority. Let's focus on their data. Let's focus on instruction, on, you know, improving our strategies and really being intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Intentional with our practice, and, you know, remind ourselves, why do we come to school? You know, kids, I ask the kids, why do you come to school? It's a big chant, and they will say, I come to school to learn. You know, and I ask teachers, why do you come to school? And they say, I come to school to teach. So that should be the priority always.
Yes, definitely instruction, and I can see that. So what drives, I almost feel like I know what the answer here is going to be, because it is all about the students, but what drives what you do day to day? Because I know there's never a dull moment in an administrator's life, right? So what drives you from day to day?
The future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, during the pandemic, I mean, we're still in the midst of it. I've heard many parents say, oh, you know, this year is just, it's a wash. We'll start again next year. And, you know, and I've heard even teachers say, not that it's a wash, they'll say, you know, we really need to focus on their social emotional well-being. And that's true, we do, because that's a new endemic. But time is ticking, you know, time is ticking. And before you know it, it'll be 5 years, 10 years, and our 10-year-olds will be 18 years old, and they'll be out there working. I'll be retired. And I really want a doctor, and, you know, to be able to really take care of me. If I need an attorney, I want an attorney to really advocate for me. If I go to the dentist, I want a dentist to know what they're doing. And I want our students from the United States to have that opportunity. You know, you go into the medical field, and I learned this in the doctoral program, and Felicia can attest to that. Many of our nurses, they're going to the Philippines, and they're recruiting people from other countries to come to the United States. Why can't our own students have that same opportunity? We need to better prepare our kids so that we don't have to go overseas and recruit. We can recruit from within. So it's my drive, our children and their future.
So where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
And I'm being very honest and vulnerable. I went into the, I went to CSUN to get my doctorate, and I went in with the intention saying, you know, when I get my doctorate, doors are going to open for me, and I'm going to get promoted like this. I'm a female, I'm Latina, I'm bilingual, and I have my doctorate. Well, I've interviewed, and I have not been promoted. I moved schools to get 2 different experiences. And it's humbling, right? And I had a plan. This is my plan. But sometimes life has other plans for you. So last summer I interviewed, and last summer I went through many interviews, and it was very disheartening. I didn't get the promotion. However, life gave me a curveball, and next thing I know, I'm the ACSA president, ACSA Region 16 president. And then somebody during the interview process, somebody sends me, Dr. Nava sends me an application to apply for this program. And it's in the midst of us transitioning from online to hybrid, COVID, pandemic. I didn't read the application, but Dr. Nava sent it to me. I applied. I've been like, just get it done, send it in, because I've got other things to do. Then on the first day of school, again, change. I get a letter saying, you made it to this part of this application process. We need to interview you on the second day of school, and we need to interview teachers and parents. Okay, come on in. And they interviewed me. And again, once I said, this is organic, I don't know what to plan for. And you can interview my parents, and you can interview students and teachers. And they did it. When she left, she said, if you don't make it this far, Lisa, you're already a distinguished principal in my eyes. And I said, what? What do you mean distinguished? She said, the Con Fellows is meant for distinguished principals. So long story short, I'm in the Con Fellows program, which is, it's a professional development program for administrators in urban schools, and we are considered distinguished.
Oh, congratulations.
So I have traveled. I've gone to New York twice. I'm going to Miami this coming Thursday. I go to Denver in June, and I go back in September, October, back to New York to present my problem of practice. So lesson learned, you're always interviewing, someone's always watching. And I'm on this journey, and I'm taking advantage of it, and I'm learning, and I'm truly enjoying it. So it's definitely a blessing in disguise. I was in the driver's seat saying, I'm going to do this, but spiritually, I believe God had another plan for me, a much better plan, because I'm the ACSA Region 16 president. Wow, where I still have to pinch myself and say, wow, that's me. And then I'm in the Con Fellows program as a distinguished principal. And it's like, and I'm one of 6 in Los Angeles Unified, and LA Unified, it's a first cohort. I'm the first cohort to participate in this. So much, much better than a promotion in my eyes. It's such an honor to participate in this program. And I'm humbled. By all means, I am so humbled by it.
Dr. Ornelas, thank you so much for your vulnerability in sharing that. I congratulate you. And I think what really speaks to it is just your passion and your drive for the students and just putting them first. And I so agree with you in that, as a principal, you want to just focus on the instructional, but then you've also got that. But everybody's watching at the same time. And I think, I haven't worked with you, but just from the way you're speaking, and yes, I've seen you as an ACSA Region 16 president in that role, but I think your passion just shines through you. So congratulations. And I want to, you're welcome. So you are a visionary, I can tell. So the next question is, what is your vision in education now?
I'll tell you I'm taking on so many trainings of professional development in Orton Gillingham, letters, and then we've got Reading Horizons at my school, which is the foundational reading programs, ensuring that our students can read, can decode, so that they can be able to be competent readers as they move on. So my vision is to ensure that all of my students are able to be able to read and be able to do well in ELA, well in math. Those are the 2 foundational skills. If they're second language learners, obviously in ELD. But my vision is, if there's consistency, a structured approach, and this is LAUSD across the board, if we can really infuse that structured approach district-wide, and if our teachers are all on board, I could see us taking our students to the next level. Our new superintendent, Carvalho, he's also very passionate. He's got his life story. If you haven't heard it, he's got an amazing life story. He was an administrator, and he has a vision. And I believe that most administrators have that same vision. And so if we all have that same vision, then we're all going to take our schools to another level. I know teachers have that same vision, otherwise they would not be in that classroom. So my vision is that we're all on this team together now to help our students enhance their, start with reading, enhance it there, start in the primary grades, and push our students forward. Lots of intervention programs are provided. Lots of money is being provided right now to schools. These next 2 years, it's a time for us to really embrace that and take advantage of that. I don't know what the following 2 years will be. So we need to build on that right now and try to build a solid foundation for our children right now.
Yes, and I agree with you. And what you said actually gets me excited. And since this is kind of informal, I'll share with that. Reading is the gateway. I am also, I'm pursuing like a reading and literacy authorization. I agree with the whole structured literacy approach, and that's a conversation to be had later. But all of that is very exciting. And I think this is what happens when we share our stories as educators. There's something that we can grab from each other that gets us inspired with moving forward. And they're like little seeds that we can, drop in different schools and locations. And then together we're like this gigantic district that hopefully can definitely, and not just district in terms of charter schools and other, schools as well, but with just basically affecting students' lives in the long run, of course. And so what advice would you give current educators and future educators?
Remember your purpose. Why are you here? Even whether you're a teacher, a paraeducator, a teacher, a coordinator, assistant principal, you're always going to have branches get in the way of your vision. And you have to always remember your why. Why am I here? Why am I here today? Because it could get blurry. It really could, and it can get blurry really quickly. So remember your why, and if you remember your why, then you're going to stay positive. You're always, when we're in education, someone's watching. And as I said earlier, I was interviewing, somebody was watching. Not only the people in leadership, but our children are watching. Mm-hmm. And we are the role models for our children. Again, at any capacity, whether you're working in the cafeteria, in the main office, kids are watching you, and they watch everything. Felicia will know I'm always in high heels. I walk in high heels. I always try to dress my very best, whether it's in jeans or a dress. I wear my high heels. I do my hair. I do my makeup, and I do it for the kids because I was that 5-year-old that looked up to my teachers. They were my role models. It was because of them that I chose this life. And I am the first. I was the first one in my family to get a degree, to go to college, get a degree. I was the first one to get my. I'm still the only one that has my doctorate. But I was watching someone, and I want to be that person for our children. I want to share that when I came to Beachy, I was in my third year in the doctoral program. And I always, my coffee with the principal meetings, it's very intimate. I do a restorative circle with them. And they knew I was graduating, and they knew my story. I always share my personal story with my parents. And a mom said, and I was holding my Monday morning assemblies. And one mom says, Mrs. Ornelas at the time, could you please come wear your gown on Monday after you graduate and tell and show it to the kids? I'm like, no, I can't do that. I go, no, I don't want to show off, and the mom said to me, no, I need you to do that. She said, you are a female Latina. You are one of us, but you made it. I want my daughter to see you out there. I get cheered up.
I'm getting goosebumps, so yeah.
So that Monday, after I graduated, I brought it all over. And my daughter says, Mom, can I go there too? My daughter was at CSUN. And I'm like, really? She's like, Mom, I want to see you up there too. So that Monday morning and I went in with my regalia, and my daughter was there and the kids were there. And I shared the story, and I said, I'm doing this not because I'm showing off boys and girls. I'm doing this because if I could do it, you could do it.
Oh.
And from that point on, I made sure that everyone at my school calls me Dachs-Ornelas, not to boost my ego, but because I want them, I am their role model. And the teachers, I'll say, call me Lisa, behind closed doors, but in front of kids, please call me Dachs-Ornelas.
Oh, that's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Two, is there a favorite quote or motto that you go by that inspires
Yes.
you?
Okay. Where I have it up there because one of my colleagues from my doctoral program gave it to me. Where there's a will, there's a way. And it's that, that strength in here, that if you have it in here, you're going to find a way. You're going to find a way to get it done. So yeah, I've always lived by where there's a will, there's a way. And I have a story that, I've had a story. It hasn't been easy for me growing up, but it was where there's that strength within, though you'll find the way to get it done.
Dr. Inez, thank you so much for your beautiful story, your beautiful words, your inspiration, your passion, your drive for the students, and for just the work that you do. It's not just for, even parents are inspired by that, right? And they take that to their families, to their homes. And I know that our students who are, or our CSUN alums, credentialing students, whoever's going to hear your story is going to be inspired. And it is about the instruction, of course, but it's also about just really that social emotional growth and making an impact, and those role models that, years later, we still look back and we think of that teacher that made us do something that, we thought was kind of maybe boring or whatever, but then we learned from it, or the smile that they gave us, or their story.
Yes.
And this is what this is about. It really is education in action, because there's so much more to it, right? It's not just showing up. It's doing a lot more. And you've shown and proven that, you have a beautiful story. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And now we're going to move on to Dr. Conlan. And they're really the same set of questions, Dr. Conlan. So to begin with, the first one is, what led you into the education field?
Thank you. First of all, Lisa, you're amazing. Thank you for sharing your story. And thank you, Aline, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this event. I am really honored and humbled that you would ask me to have a story to share with people that would be interesting. And I Lisa, you got me all emotional.
I'm feeling it too, only because
well, Lisa and I were in the same doctorate program, so I hear her words, but I see visions of things that were happening while we were together. So it's wonderful to hear. But okay, let's go back to your question. How did I get involved in education? Going back to early times, I guess, as a child, I am the fourth of 9 children. So I was always either a follower or a leader. And for my younger brothers, I was always the teacher. I would, kind of show them how to do things. So I always felt that that was kind of a natural role for me. But in terms of me being in the education field, I took a circuitous route to get here. I was a substitute teacher. Well, before then, I was a television reporter, producer, and writer. So that was a completely different world altogether. I was going to be the next Connie Chung. And you know, sometimes there are plans that you have and there are plans that are made for you. And I just followed along. I'm going to have to clean my glasses because it's very misty in there. Maybe I'll leave them off. And well, I ended up going back to school after raising my kids. I was a stay-home mom after I decided to stop my field in television reporting, producing, and writing to be a full-time mom. So I became a full-time mom and enjoyed it. I got a chance to go to those Mommy and Me classes, be part of the PTA, get involved in all those parent groups. So I love that role. I was even a baseball coach. I was one of the few moms that was coaching in Little League and enjoyed that. You know, when you have 6 brothers, you just do. And so, and I had 2 boys, that became my role. And then when, you know, they grow up too, a friend said, well, you know, why don't you consider going into teaching? And so I became a bilingual teacher and was able to do that for a little bit while my kids were in school. And then one of my best friends said, well, why don't you think about speech language pathology? It's a little bit of communication and also teaching, and you love those 2 things together. So I signed up over at CSUN, took a few classes and jumped right in. And I remember one of my sons was in, I think, 2nd or 3rd grade, and I made these flashcards, and he would say, Mom, what is an epiglottis? You know, and so he was teaching, he was reviewing with me, and he would give me these questions, and I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I'm a student with my own children, and suddenly as I was told, well, you're being a role model for them because you're looking at future education opportunities for yourself. And so I became a speech language pathologist and got my degree from CSUN in communication disorders and sciences. And my life has changed since then. I became a school-based speech language pathologist. I had an opportunity to work in the hospitals as well, because that was part of our training. But I love working in the schools, and that was the opportunity that was afforded me at that time. And then shortly after that, a few years later, I ended up getting my doctorate in educational leadership because that was the setting where I was most involved in. And my dissertation was on sports-related concussions and return to learn after a sports-related concussion. So very recently, actually last month, we were able to put together a panel of experts, including various representatives from the Cal States, and as well as from our alumni chapters here at CSUN. And it was well attended, and we had people that came from all over the world to listen to our webinar. So education is a wide field. So there are many opportunities there, including for someone like a speech language pathologist like myself.
Congratulations about that event. I know that it went
Thank
really
you.
well. Yes. Tell us about your day-to-day role as a speech pathologist in the schools.
Okay, well, no 2 days are
I know.
ever alike. I work from kids from preschool all the way up to high school at this current time. I was working with kids that have difficulties in communicating. Some of them are nonverbal, some of them are just learning the language. And so we have kids that have language deficits as well as speech sound disorders, stuttering, and voice issues. So there's so many aspects of it. And so a typical day is basically doing speech therapy with them. Sometimes we'll do a screening or an assessment of a child that either has services or is needing services. We have small groups where we do it. I collaborate with teachers all the time, as well as other special education providers like the occupational therapist, school psychologists, the resource teachers, the administrators, and of course the families. I'm always in communication with many people of the individualized education, IEP team, so that we can look at the needs of each child, because each child has individual needs, and especially related to communication.
So if you had the power to change anything in your current role for the betterment of the students, what would it be and why?
We're still in the middle of this pandemic, although it's going toward where we can see each other, we can take off our masks and things like that. In terms of our immediate needs right now, I think just being able to connect with each other. During the pandemic, I got a chance to see kids through this lens, and I got a chance to see them in their homes, in their natural environment, and to connect with their families and their parents. That's something we normally didn't get a chance to see. And I really think it's important for us to see that there are some social-emotional needs that these kids are experiencing right now, as well as the educators. This is a really tough time, as Dr. Bering was saying. This is a really busy time for all of us, but the fact that we're taking the time to connect here today shows that this is an important topic, that we want to be able to get the message out there that education is a field that is very impactful, and there are many opportunities for people to make a difference.
So what drives the work that you do from day to day?
Oh
And
my
in the bigger
goodness.
picture. I know.
Yes.
That's the big
I'm
picture.
really inspired by, first, my parents. They were, my mother was a Fulbright scholar. They met in Minnesota, of all places, and my father was a physician. So they always encouraged education and giving back to the community, having a grateful heart. And I've tried to impress that on my children and the people that surround me, the idea that gratitude and kindness and thoughtfulness go a long way. And so it helps us make choices, it helps us feel grounded, and it gives us an opportunity to feel that we have a purpose. And that purpose sometimes may not be known to you immediately, but eventually, as you move on through life, you'll find the inspiration that you need to move forward.
Thank you. And so where do you see yourself 5 years from now?
Oh.
5 years from now.
I know. The interesting thing is I like to try to live each day as it comes. I think the pandemic has shown me that. I had my 10-year plan, I had my 5-year plan, but somehow that got all pushed aside when the pandemic came around. And I thought, gee, what will I be doing in 5 years? I've been fortunate to be able to have mentors and teachers and people that have been in my community, and also internationally, that have inspired me and encouraged me and seen talent in me that I didn't even see in myself. So I really don't know where the next few years will take me. I know I'm quite involved in the CSUN Alumni Association, and that's been just a journey, being able to connect with people not only in education but in other fields, and seeing the impact that we can have as alumni of our wonderful university. In my profession, I am also involved in the California Speech Language Hearing Association. I've been a commissioner of organizational advancement and outreach, and have helped with student scholarships, as well as presented in professional development seminars. I'm currently in the Professional Practices Advisory Committee, and we're talking about how the new CDC milestones for children have changed and how that's impacting our profession. And we're trying to see what kind of changes can happen as a result of that. And I'm also involved in the American Speech Language Hearing Association, and I am reviewing research from all around the world for our Perspectives magazine, and I get a chance to look at what other people from other countries are showing in terms of our profession and the impact that they'd like to see of their research. So that's another way for me to have some kind of a footprint, I guess is what I want to say, have a footprint. And And of course, that traumatic brain injury and concussion awareness that is used to be a taboo topic. And now it's out in the forefront. It's a significant health issue. And I have been able to speak nationally and internationally about that topic. One of my more recent topics is on grief and loss and the impact of that, especially after the pandemic, but also in terms of teacher burnout or educator burnout, just burnout in general, and the trauma that's involved in that, and how your brain can create new pathways so that that trauma can turn into something positive. So there's so many different connections that I see from all the things I've learned. My grandma used to always say, "El saber no ocupa lugar." So, knowledge doesn't take up space. So the fact that you as educators have this opportunity to share your knowledge, that's a gift. That's a true gift that we can give others, and then they can in turn give to others.
Last year when we had this event, thank you, Dr. Conlan. Last year when we had this event, I kept like writing down things that were said that really were like profound statements. And so with the next question, which is, are you a visionary in education? Dr. Conlan, I mean, you are definitely a visionary in education, because your last, what you just gave us, your answer of just being involved in so many different organizations, and how you can find some connection in between all of them, or maybe some of them, but you're definitely a visionary in education. But I'd like you to take a moment and answer that question, because we'd like to hear what your vision is.
Well, I think that everybody can make a difference, whether you're the student, the teacher, the administrator, a parent, or if you don't feel like you have a role, there is a role for you, even in the community. So if we look at education, and I've had the pleasure of being able to see kids from preschool all the way up to high school, being a college student, and then working with college students that have graduated, have their master's and doctorate diplomas, and are moving on into their careers. So if we look at the spectrum of, why here did it take this long for them to get this in their education and in terms of their learning, especially in special education. So I believe that in every level of education, there's an opportunity for us to provide an impact. And if we think about what we can do as educators to look beyond what's in front of us, and see that every person has this opportunity if we have collaboration. And I think collaboration is the key in education. So when we had that big seminar, we collaborated with so many people, right? But in doing so, when we presented the seminar, we had the students involved, we had the speakers involved, we had the people behind the scenes, and all those people brought those together. And if you think about it, that collaboration made the event what it is. So if you take that same concept into education and think, okay, every single person has a role, has an importance, has a significance, and can feel that significance. There's a lot of times we don't feel significant. We feel kind of like, yes, I'm doing my job. But in doing my job, I can give 100%, but I still need to feel that well. I need to feel that well, that I'm not only appreciated, but that I'm needed. And I know that because of my job in helping people communicate, I will always have a job, because people need to be able to talk or to communicate in one way. I work with kids that are nonverbal as well. And I think it's important to raise that bar. Because sometimes we think our perception is that's all they can do. And I'm always trying to lift that up in the eyes of the parents and the teachers and in the school community, that they have something that they can contribute.
Thank you. Day to day, it is, I would say, somewhat difficult to fill that well, right? But
Yes.
as Dr. Ornelas stated earlier, someone is watching, someone's always watching. And we hope that it's really the kids that are watching, because I do believe that they see what we do. And thank you so much for that. And so to end with, is there a favorite quote or motto that you have? And if so, please share.
As a kid, I always wrote down words. Maybe that's why I'm a speech language pathologist. But ever since I was little, I always wrote down lots and lots and lots and lots of sayings. And I still continue to do that. Now, you know, you can like do pictures now of things when you see them, whether they're on LinkedIn or Facebook, or, you know, a friend had said something. But something I always add at the end of my email signatures is, every day offers unexpected miracles.
Oh.
And the other thing I'd like to add to that is another quote: out of difficulties grow miracles. So during this most difficult, pressure-filled time, one thing that I told my friends and colleagues, and we have a laugh about it, but pressure makes diamonds. So I know there are a lot of diamonds out there that have had a difficult time these last few years, but every day offers unexpected miracles. The kids surprise us all the time. We surprise ourselves sometimes too. So I feel it's important to be grateful for that miracle, and it does happen every day.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm grateful that you were able to join us today and share it. And I just want to say that, you know, what you said at the beginning, that we have the plans that we have, right? The plans that you have and the plans that are made for you. And the plans that were made for you, Dr. Conlan, you ended up in a beautiful place because you just give so much. And I think what you give, even, you know, without it's definitely felt by other people. And collaboration is so key, right? Because that's how you and I had met, you know, long ago, when you were, well, you were a speech pathologist and you still are, but I was a resource teacher. And that's where we found the passion of collaborating about our students. So
I have to thank you, because the resource teachers, I think, are some of the finest resources available in our district, and just in general, because you are able to show us how reading connects with language and how we can also reinforce that knowledge, and whether it be a child being able to learn their speech sounds or be able to read or understand, comprehend, all those things. And that's why the collaboration and our friendship has allowed me to grow. So I want to thank you.
And it is really about that finding, you know, through that collaboration, we end up supporting the student the most, because one of the cases that we worked on, I don't want to say cases, but really, because it's a student, right? One of the students we worked on was really about the child's communication. And even though, you know, it all connects, whether it's reading or language, we find ways to support that child. And that's really why we come here and we share our stories, so we could get better at doing that too. Thank you.
Yes.
And fill that well for each other too.
Yes.
When we can't fill it ourselves. So
it's an opportunity to be a better version of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Pedroza, how are you this morning?
Hello, good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for being here. And you do serve now on our board as an education chapter. So thank you for that. And I'm excited about you sharing your story with us. So what led you in the education fields?
Okay, well, to begin with, I'll give you a little background on me, and then I'll lead it up into the educational field of interest. So I grew up in Los Angeles, in East Los Angeles, and I grew up in poverty. And, you know, I grew up mostly in the 70s and 80s, and then high school was in the late 80s, very early 90s. And at the time, we had moved around quite a bit. So anyway, I was a C average student at high school, and that was mostly due to my environmental factors. So once I finished high school, I had really close friends I used to hang out with and go to their home. And I was talking to one of my really good friends at the time, his mother, and she had asked me what I was going to do. And I was like, what do you mean, what am I going to do? And she's like, yeah, well, you're 18, you're already done with high school. What are you going to do? And I really had no plan. And so I didn't really know what to say. And so we were talking and we were just going on about it. And she, at the time, was working as a secretary at an elementary school. And so she told me that they were hiring for the after school program, and it was called RAP, Recreational Arts Program. I think that's what it was, in the city of Glendale. And so I went ahead and I applied through it, and it was an after-school program where I spent time with the kids for about 2.5 hours. And it was first started off as academics and, watching the kids when the parents would come around 5:36. And so then it got a little bit more academic based, and it was required of homework. And anyway, the district at the time started to require 6 units that we were required to take in child development. And so I love the job. I love working with the kids, and it just seemed so natural, and I just enjoyed the environment. So I went ahead and enrolled at Glendale Community College, and I took 2 classes of child development courses. And I went ahead and proceeded with that. And at the time, my major interest at the time was forensic psychologist, because in the 90s, that was the popular thing, and DNA was popular, and people were talking about crime scenes, etc. So anyway, I continued on with my education there at Glendale Community College. And then I went ahead and applied for a position in class as an assistant in special education. And I went ahead and did so, and I enjoyed it very much. And what I did was, when I transferred from Glendale Community College to CSUN to earn my bachelor's, I worked on my psychology degree at the time, because that was still my drive at that time. And as when I graduated and got closer to it, I actually just fell in love with teaching, education, and students, of course. And so when I was done with my bachelor's degree, I forgot her name. She's an Italian woman, and I don't know if she's still there in the psychology department. She had 2 PhDs, but she let me know that the United States only recognized 1. And I used to do lab with her, and I used to do surveys, and I used to do like an extra class with her. And so I was really motivated to go that route. But deep down, I guess I discovered, of course, was education and working with students. So I applied, and for the back then, you were able to be a teacher on a waiver. So as long as I proved that I was enrolled at CSUN, I went ahead and entered the master's program, and for special education, focusing on mild to moderate disabilities. And I also worked with my my preliminary and my clear credential there. So all of that kind of just led me up through that. And then I graduated from CSUN in 2007, and then I had a good colleague. Oh, so anyway, let me backtrack a little bit. When I went ahead and graduated, I was still working as a special education teacher in mathematics. I was teaching, and I taught mathematics from 2003 to roughly, I think it was maybe 2010. And then I became a teacher for students with emotional disturbance, and it was an inclusion class, and I worked with them for approximately 3 to 4 years. And then I went back into the mathematics position, working with students. And then during the pandemic, I was offered if I wanted to, because I have a credential in science as well. So the last 2 years I've taught science at Abraham Lincoln High School in East LA, or Lincoln Heights. And I've been there actually for 15 years. Wow. So within all that, one of my colleagues went ahead and encouraged me to apply for the USC doctoral program. And so I remember in high school, we went on a USC trip, and I loved it. I loved the design, the architecture, and everything, but I felt like I didn't fit in. I didn't see people who looked like me. I didn't feel comfortable. I just, that was a long time ago, of course. But I went ahead and applied, and I went ahead and got accepted, and I went ahead and completed my doctoral at USC. Okay.
So you've had different roles in, I guess, with teaching, yes. Even working with students with who are labeled as emotionally disturbed. Yes. What are some of the glows with working in these different positions that you've had?
Goals as in education?
I'm sorry, glows. Did I say goals? Glows. Sorry.
No, I couldn't hear you. Okay. Working with students with learning disabilities, the glow there is that, of course, there's so many biases out there, and there's so many stereotypes, and I've always, look at it as the student has labeled as a learning disability, but whenever it comes down to it, it's the educator. We need to deliver our instruction in a different way that's out, outside of the curriculum. We need to bring in other tools. And so a glow working with students with special needs or learning disabilities, that when you tap into their knowledge and you see them shine and they get something and they get motivated, and they're not only motivated by me, but it's mostly they start to develop self-motivation, and they're engaged and they feel confident, they feel secure, and I can see them develop and grow. And then in the emotional disturbance class, which is a very challenging class, I will admit that it was very challenging. But in that case, the very intelligent students, but of course, the emotional component had students with bipolar. Of course, the mild forms of schizophrenia, but they were unable, of course, to classify it due to the age. They usually wait till approximately 20 to 30 years old to make a definite. And then I had other students with others, But anyway, those students, to this day, I still communicate with them. They're in their 30s. And so it was the bond, it was the connection. It was me teaching them social cues. It was me teaching them how to use their words and how to retrain their thoughts and how to really connect with and to really look back on the underlying problem and what's causing all this stress and why are you shooting out in such either a verbal or physical action or reaction. So I was able to work with them, and it was a very small class, approximately 6 to 8 students. And so we would do counseling sessions with the psych would come into, we do group therapies as well. And we would work together, and then we would go into the academics. And so very rewarding, very touching, the bond is so great. It's been about 12 years that I've worked with these kids and we still communicate together. I have seen that, of course, they're somewhat successful at times or moments. They still do go up a little bit on the roller coaster, and then they do reach out to me and I do communicate with them and still give them advice. So, yeah.
Did you say it was a class of 16 students?
No, the ED class was 6 to 8.
Oh, 6 to 8. So those were 6 to 8 lives that you were able to, on their education continuum, you've been able to develop that bond with them to where years later you're still connected. And I just want to highlight one thing that you said was that you worked on that social emotional part, and then you went into the instructional part. And that's such an important factor, right? Because it needs to be addressed, especially with students who have those needs, but they can then have the tools to tap into the instructional part and feel motivated by it and also learn through it.
Yeah, exactly. If you're emotionally unstable, regardless of your IQ, your intelligence, or experiences, you really can be a successful individual.
Thank you for sharing that. And then if you had the power to change anything in your current role for the betterment of education, of the students that you serve, what would it be and why? So
in my current role, what I'm trying and what I do try is I am a very strong advocate in special education students. So what I want to change and strengthen is the value of a student who has a disability, the differences, looking at their differences as being a contribution, tapping into them, learning how to teach them how to use the correct tool to grow, to become a successful individual, and to also realize not only success doesn't always have to be just going to university, but be successful as a person, as a family member, as a community member, and try your best to either go on to some type of educational field. And so I'm starting in the high school setting because that's where I teach now. I teach daytime at Abraham Lincoln High School. I teach science. And so, and then the other connection would be I work at USC, and what I'm doing there is I'm working with teacher candidates, and I'm preparing them to earn their special education credential. So I'm at the student level in the daytime, and in the nighttime, I'm instilling ideas and I'm trying to grow and give them different perspectives and how to tap in and how to get the highest potential from these students, and how to be an advocate and how to help them be successful in every way.
Yeah, that's very inspirational. What drives the work that you do?
The children, the kids. I went into, as a young adult, like I said, I didn't really know where I wanted to go. I went into after school program. I chose the special education department. And the reason why I did that was because my little sister, which she's not little anymore, but we're about 13 years apart. And so she was in the 3rd grade. They noticed something about her, which I thought was very late, but at the time, of course, I was a late teen, so I didn't know anything about it. But they noticed that she had a visual impairment. And so from K to 3rd, she played it off where nobody noticed. So she lost, and she didn't really develop any of her foundational skills. You know, and so I saw this more because, and to this day, she still like laughs about it, but I followed her as an assistant. I worked at the elementary, the middle school, and then the high school. And so when she was in high school, she had finished her econ government final, and she came out, and it was passing period. And I would always, you know, go out there and say hi to her. And I asked her, how did your final go? And she's like, oh, it's good. And I go, did you pass? She's like, yeah, I passed. And I go, yeah. And I was like, just talking about it. And I go, so what were the questions? And she's like, well, actually, he just gave us a final on our favorite food. And I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. And I go, favorite food, but isn't this government? And she's like, yeah. And so I didn't want to put the stress on her, but I was upset. I was like, you know, why would you give something that doesn't even relate to the curriculum? And why are you giving something so basic and so fundamental just because you're in special ed, you know? So I did share that with my mom, and my mom did come to the school and talk to the admin. And back then, of course, the parents, they heard, but it wasn't, could say as supportive as it is today, you know, where the parent, of course, we know the parent is in charge ultimately, you know? And so now she's 36 years old, and she still has problems reading and writing. And she just, it's sad. She just works on little like cashier jobs for a while. She, you know, takes care of my mom. She tries her best to do stuff, but of course she has me and my other sister, Martha, that help them.
Thank you for sharing such a personal story, because it does, you know, point out what a lot of people do go through. And that's where it does take us in education on the, you know, those who are on the ground working with students every day to notice those things, right? Where a student might be, you know, needing some special attention in an area, and then be that voice for that student and let the parents know too, because let's face it, a lot of families are just trying to get food, you know, depends on where we serve, of course, but, you know, a lot of Title I schools, for example, a lot of parents are just working really hard to get the food on the table and to pay the bills and all of that kind of stuff. And sadly, those needs do kind of go unchecked, right? Or unseen. And then fast forward years later, it really impacts the life of that person.
That's exactly why I work at a Title I school at Lincoln High School. I work there because of that, because of the, you know, similar to what I grew up with. And, you know, similar, I want them to see somebody that looks similar to them or somebody in their family. And I want them to know that I grew up a lot like them. That's why I'm still there.
Thank you. And I know that is very impactful for that community for sure. And so are you a visionary in education? I think you are, definitely.
Yes, of course. Yes.
So please share your vision.
Yeah, my vision, of course, is you know, I strongly believe that when a teacher can support a student holistically, you know, academics, social, getting to know the persona, the culture, the community, bringing it all together and tying it into, of course, academics. When we're able to do all of this, the student will, of course, become successful in all different realms. And they may not be successful on one point, maybe just talking about social cues, but they have their academic base. But as they grow and develop, they can start to balance out those weaknesses with their strengths. And then they can ultimately become, you know, a successful person that's going to be there for the community. And then, of course, success is really measured by the individual and what they set for their standards.
That's true. Thank you. What advice would you give current educators or future educators, maybe considering roles and serving in special education, for example?
So it's kind of related to what I said a little while ago. And my advice is for future educators is, of course, you start off with the passion, you have the motivation, of course, is the students. That's what our whole purpose is, to educate people, but you also have to educate yourself too. And like I stated, whatever school you choose, it's very important for you to learn the school, learn the history of the school, learn the community, learn all the different diversities based on nationalities and race, you know, bring in their culture, bring all of that into your lesson plans, make it personalized. You know, I always use students' names. I always talk about the place that's right across the street that makes the best carne asada fries. You know, go down the street with the best burritos, the little lady that sells tamales down the street. I know exactly where it's at, you know, and I make reference and then I connect it to mathematics, or we talk about science-based stuff. And so bringing all that together, and then that's going to develop a really strong rapport with you and the student. They're going to be like, yeah, you know, that teacher really cares about me. You know, they're taking the time to really know who I am and what I love. And so it's also not only going to engage, but it'll motivate them. You'll get the class going.
So it's assets-based education, and also just really getting to learn and get to know the whole child.
Yes.
And if you have a favorite quote or motto, would you please share it?
Sure. Mine's a motto. I just made it up myself, and I've used this ever since I was a kid. Well, not a kid, maybe a teenager. And it's very basic. It's going to sound very what we call country, but and then I'll go ahead and I'll explain it to you. I've always tell myself, whenever I feel down, I feel struggled, or maybe I failed, which is excellent. You know, nothing's wrong with failing. You know, the only issue is, of course, we don't get up and learn from it, you know, but whenever that does happen, I always tell myself, keep on trucking. And so what I do is I take that in the sense that life is similar to the up and down roads that are all across the United States, of course, and there's always obstacles everywhere across the board, you know, but just like a truck that you see on the highway or the street, it just keeps on moving. And so whatever's thrown at me, up or down, or something that just gets in my way, take a break and but make sure you get up and you just keep on trucking.
What a great visualization, right? Keep on trucking. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's great that it's your own, because, you know, yeah, thank you so much. I love it. Sure. So, you know, this has been so, I think, purposeful in that I'm sure, you know, for me, I saw there was something to grab on from each one of you. And and how many of you felt that way? You know, if anybody, we can just you can unmute and share what really resonated with you from hearing each other's stories, because that's what really it's about. There's that one saying, I think it was something like, individually we are one drop, but together we are an ocean. Dr. Conlan, do you remember that one? It used to be on one of the bulletins of one of the schools that we served at. But it stood out to me, because that is what we are, right? We're individually one drop, but together we are an ocean of educators, purposeful-minded people who, you know, want to make a difference, and who really, a lot of us, we don't even know how it happened, because we may not have had that plan. Some of us knew, but we're here now, and we hear each other's stories. So thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Pedroza. If anybody wants to unmute and talk about share what resonated with you, we could take a few moments.
I can go ahead and do so. I think across the board, we all have passion and love, and ultimately it comes down to the children. And of course, the children, it kind of sounds a little cheesy, but of course they're the future. But not only that, they're going to go ahead and carry our own ideals as of today. And so across the board, what I got the sense of course, is that children come first. And like you stated, the connections that we share amongst each other, collaboration, I remember hearing that, representation based on different socio-economical, and also race and nationality, because of course, Los Angeles is so diverse. So it's very important to bring all of these people as representatives across the board, so we can go ahead and come together and share our ideas, and then start to continue to build, you know, the ultimate, you know, with education, you know, make sure the students are very successful.
Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Chanel, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. First, I'd like to thank the panelists for joining Eileen this morning in this webinar. I have a question for the panelists. You know, over recently, or over a period of time, we've been losing the number of teachers because of the pandemic, because of retirements. I'm curious to hear from the three of you if you have any thoughts about how we can recruit and encourage young people and people who want to transition from other occupations into the teaching profession. How do we share the passion that the three of you have and use that as a tool?
I'll go ahead and start. I was invited by Human Resources to be a part of their advisory focus group. For that same reason, they're reaching out to principals asking us, how can we recruit and what can we do to retain? And I'll just share with you, LA Unified is recruiting, and they have an incentive of $5,000 for anybody that wants to teach at a high needs school. And so my school is a high needs school. So I've got a few new teachers, and they're receiving a $5,000 stipend over, I think, 2 or 3 years to teach at a school like mine. Probably Lincoln High School is one of them too. So that's a monetary incentive, but one that's more intrinsic is really having that conversation at the school site, especially starting with leaders. It starts with relationships. They've surveyed so many teachers, asking them, why do you stay at your school? And the number one answer is, I like the people I work with. People care about me. And there's this saying that I tell my teachers, but I would tell other administrators. So when it comes down to kids don't know how much the kids don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. You know what? As a leader, my teachers don't care how much I know either until they know how much I care about them. So building trust and relationship is foundational to keeping our teachers. Recruiting, we're trying to recruit principals all over. We're looking at how do we market our school? How do we market for student enrollment? And then how do we market to bring in people to work at our school? And, I think it has to sell itself from other teachers. Teachers, they're recruiting on their own, saying, I need an intervention coordinator right now. Our teachers are going out looking for another intervention coordinator because, again, you're going to come and join a team. You're going to come in and join a family. And I say family because again, as a leader, I tell my teachers this, I spend more time with you than I do with my own family at home. I mean, really, and we really have to think about that. We're on this earth for such a short amount of time. And I'm spending a big chunk of my life with this family at Beachy. So you've got to build that in there, that trust and relationships.
I just want to echo what Lisa was talking about in terms of relationship building. I think it's really a significant part of successful recruitment. And in terms of just down the pipeline earlier on, I think having these career fairs, having the time to talk to the students when they are just learning about what careers they are thinking about, whether it be starting, I think even starting in the middle school level, all the way through high school. I know that when I was invited over at Chatsworth High School to talk to the medical magnet over there about my profession, and because we not only serve in schools, we serve in hospitals as well as rehabilitation care centers and universities. So the breadth and depth of my profession really appealed to one of these students that she connected somehow with the words I was telling her. And I am so excited to say she already has her clinical fellowship, and she is, and this was, I don't know, maybe 7 years ago that I was over at Chatsworth talking about my career. And so since then, I've been invited by a middle school and another high school to talk. And you don't realize how much your words or the impact of that particular event can have on the life of a student. And of course, the monetary incentives are great as well. But I think the relationship is important to build it and maintain it. And that's another step that I think sometimes people forget. Maintaining relationships where you're connected with people when you don't need them. Sending them hey, I was thinking about you today, or I learned about this in school. What do you think about it? Those type of relationships are just as important as, hey, I have a job available. Why don't you think about it?
And then I could go ahead and add my point of view. There are two models out there from other universities that currently do, what they do is they reach out to the high school settings for students that are being ready, to graduate. They do offer educational courses on class. My high school, we do have college courses that the students can take on campus, and that's what we're affiliated with the university close to us. So that might be something possibly, doing like an introduction to education on the class. They get credits towards the university or the college. They'll get those credits, and they are transferable, or usually what it is, it's pretty much tailored to the university, so they're trying to get the student to go into the university. And then what they have there is they have a residential program where they do provide financial support, where they do give them. I worked with one, I was mentoring one student teacher, and it was for a year, and they provide him with I don't remember the amount, but a stipend for living expenses. And then because he was in this program, they actually even covered his tuition. And so there's a brand new one that's another university that's doing exactly the same. But of course, the criteria and the requirements which they should be, are going to be very high, because you're getting your tuition paid for, you are getting a stipend. And so that's one route to go. Also, what I've done is I've communicate with my teacher assistants, because they're in the classroom setting. I check in with them, I see where they are. I motivate them. I see, how do you feel about going into education? I support them, I give them information. So that route can be, if you guys reach out to administrators at local middle schools or high schools, even elementary, just reach out and see if you can talk to an administrator, if you guys can provide a little webinar to the assistants to see, they're in education, and they're of course for a purpose. They love the children. They just maybe need a little push or a little kick to get going,
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you.
I think also the linked learning programs that exist in some of the schools has also been a way for the kids to connect to careers and to be able to see that aspect of it. I love the idea of being exposed to the different parts of education, whether it be in special education, general education, specific, if you want to go more into the reading aspect of it and teaching that, or, well, there's so many different jobs in education.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that's what actually I think it's great. I mean, a lot of people start off just thinking that what they want to do is just be in the classroom, and then they realize there's so many different ways of serving too. So in a way, it is a career that allows a person who seeks it, a person who wants to serve in other ways, to have that potential to experience and be challenged and grow in service to others in different capacities. And if it's being the kindergarten teacher for 30 years, that's fine too, right? That's also a beautiful story. Dr. Baring.
Good morning. First of all, I want to thank our presenters. Wow, how inspiring. And I'm really excited to share this with all of our department chairs, who can then send it out to faculty to share with students in classes, which I think is probably the best way to get it out at this time, rather than inviting people in on a Saturday morning. Students, they don't necessarily get up at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, or that may be part of our issue. And we're heading into the last few weeks of this semester. So I'm sorry there aren't more of them here, but I know how to reach them. So thank you, because this is meaningful and it will be shared. I just wanted to also let all of you know, first of all, I'm just so impressed with the various initiatives and just the pathways that all of our presenters today pursued, and all the amazing things that you've done along those pathways to make a difference for students in education. We are at the epicenter of changing the world in education. If there was ever anyone right now who could make a difference, in our future as a society, as a country, in terms of both the workforce, but also the bigger issues of values and in understanding accurate information about our world, it's us in the educational field. So I so appreciate everything you do, because you're really making a difference in meaningful ways. Back here at the College of Education, we're very excited to be engaging, especially in all sorts of activities that are linked to social justice and social emotional well-being. which are two of our main focuses. And I think really I heard threads of that throughout everything that our presenters talked about today. So we're involved with the Neurodiversity Initiative with UCLA and the CSUs. We're proposing right now a K-3 reading certificate. It's not a reading specialist credential, but something that we can fund teachers from LAUSD at the earliest grades to come and do some summer work that would increase their ability to support low-income young children in the LAUSD school system. So let's keep your fingers crossed, because that's a big initiative. We also have an initiative to support teachers of color in retention in the public schools, and that's especially with LAUSD. And we just finished one in Compton, because there's attrition overall in our teaching profession right now, as we know, and that's not good, but especially in our teachers who are representative of the communities we serve. And so we are especially recruiting, preparing, and wanting to retain teachers from diverse backgrounds, or who are, great at working within diverse communities in our college at the moment. So we're looking at the big, major ways that we can try to make a difference with our students as we're preparing them. And that includes our school counselors, school psychologists, and administrators, as well as our special ed, elementary ed, and secondary ed teachers, to really get out there and make the world a better place, and really, give back in deeply meaningful ways that just as you've all described, you've been touched by, and that we want to continue to do with our children out in the public schools. So thanks for everything you're doing, and keep up the great work, and keep inspiring people, and we will do the same back here at CSUN. So thank you, everybody.
And Dr. Bering, thank you for being here today to also, share in this, because you hear the stories, and you're able to also impact on a different level with our credentialing students. And thank you for sharing about those initiatives. They seem really exciting, and something to definitely for us to look forward to, and hopefully everything will pass through. So thank you for that. Does anyone else have anything else they'd like to add? Okay. Well, I want to say thank you all for being here today. We will definitely work on ways to promote this a little more in terms of hopefully in person, because I love the comment that I think it's Melissa. Yes, Melissa put in a chat that she was very touched by this. And I just, and that's what it's really about, right? And also the other part to it is about networking. So in the future, it would be great where we can have students come in and drop off resumes perhaps, and just get to have those conversations with us who are serving in the schools. So with that, I wanted to say thank you, and we hope to see you again next year. And Elijah, I think this is where the recording's gonna, if you could please stop that, and then